cats, cops, and C4. So we have a few problems. Cenk calls into the station while the plasma flies overhead. Why the hell so many people insisted on trying to fire around cover when they have plasma shot confused him, but he wasn't going to question his blessings. When things dissolve into chaos, it's best not to think too hard, just act. Still, there is a certain serenity to his movements and mindset. Sure, things have gone completely around the bend, but it's been done in a way he understands and can deal with. "Is that plasma fire?" the dispatcher demands. "Yes, it is. We were following up on a lead when we accidentally ran into what appears to have been a meeting of the minds between two separate and highly paranoid gangs. They're blaming each other and..." Cenk cuts himself off as he drops the communicator and catches a plasma blast with his left hand to stop it from flying off to ruin the day of the idiot gawkers behind them. Stupid civvies. My apologies. Some civilians aren't clearing out and I need to babysit them. Some reinforcements would be nice before I have to kill everyone. You're in the middle of a shootout. You have permission. Just no straight-up executions or torture. Oh, good. I wasn't completely sure on the protocol. Thank you for clarifying things. Send a paddy wagon, a meat wagon, and an ambulance. Cenk replies before turning back to the gawkers. "Get the hell out of here, you blithering idiots!" They scramble as he pockets his communicator. Linda is keeping their heads down with her shock pistol. Vera is in war form and wrestling with a pair of canadors who are just barely fighting her to a draw, which is impressive considering one is on her back and trying to choke her out and the other is trying to do something about the claws. None of the three women are unscathed. As he rises out of his cover, laser burns by his head and he draws his pistol and fires. The canador strangling Vera goes down screaming and Vera starts to savage the other now that she can bring her fangs to bear. That's one woman dead and possibly a second if the shock from his bullet kills her. There's a brief pause in the fire as the screaming gets to people and Cenk takes careful aim before another woman, a rabbi's, goes down screaming. This draws the attention of Vera, who charges the group. A lot of lasers and plasma are flying in her direction, but the focus of the gang is cut two ways, with neither side giving enough attention, with Cenk and his pistol grabbing nearly as much attention as the screaming, snarling, and yowling Vera. This allows Linda to line up a few careful shots, and several gang members quickly go down with their every muscle seizing up in a fury. There is a scream of absolute fury, and one of the civilians charges at Cenk, who shifts to the side, but she shows a true killing instinct, which is odd in a Drin, and she starts reorienting herself while trying to gouge at his face and eyes and gun all at once with her multiple arms. She slams into him with a rudimentary but effective tackle. He rolls with the tackle and gets his legs between himself and her. A double kick sends her flying, and as she hits the wall, she turns enough for Cenk to see a strange thing stuck to the back of her neck. It looks like a medical patch. It's probably a low-grade frenzy patch. That's bad. He rolls upright and charges the already recovered Drin and tackles her instead of letting her tackle him. Her scrabbling, gouging fingers force his gun to go off, but blessedly, neither of them are hit as he headbutts her in the face and gets his offhand around the back of her neck to pull at the device. It rips off and she screams in fury before going limp. He barely has time to examine the mostly destroyed bit of jury-rigged drug injector with its payload mostly crushed and leaking in his hand before another frenzied woman. A deep crag Nagasha who is too berserk to do anything but try to wrestle him. Which is a good thing, as a huge amount of Axiom expertise with lethal intent is a problem. Thankfully, he has a hard head, and his adrenaline is pumping hard enough to resist being stunned as she tries to bash his head in with her own. Her patch is much larger and clearly sized for a Nagasha, but before he can grab it, a third form slams into their mosh pit and the flappy form of a berserk so near is added to the mess. He barely has time to pull out the magazine of his pistol, as the Sonir apparently has enough resistance to the patch, or a low enough dose, to try and go for his weapon. He tosses the magazine away and manages to deflect her, trying to shove the weapon in his face, and the bullet goes into the floor, and he now has a ringing sound in his ear as everyone in arm's reach is fighting everyone else. Thankfully, these aren't specialized frenzy patches, just general frenzy patches. So they're just fighting everyone they see and not just him. He does, however, get a glimpse of a figure wearing a cloth face mask and a black hoodie, watching from where the civilians were. They notice his noticing and scurry away even as the Nagasha bites him in the shoulder. The wings of the Sonir beat down on both of them as her foot claws rip at his shirt and pants as she tries to open him up wide. He grabs the Batwoman by the foot and scrambles around her even as the Nagasha bites again and gets a mouthful of shirt for her trouble, and he locates the frenzy patch on her left wing. It takes 2 grabs to get a grip on it, but his nails dig in and he tears out the patch. The Sonir drops with a sigh of sudden exhaustion, and Cenk goes back to wrestling a pissed-off snake woman. "Stop biting!" he shouts in fury as she gets another mouthful of him, and he manages to grab her head and push her back to give himself a few moments of breathing room. There's no sign of laser or plasma blasts in his peripheral vision, but he can't bother to focus on that as the damn woman is flexible to the point of sheer insanity, and she wraps around him. A bit more finagling, and he gets his right arm out of the coils and starts reaching around until he finds the frenzy patch and manages to dig his fingernails in. As it comes off, she shudders and suddenly goes limp. Did anyone else spot that shroud agent? I suspect she was the one slapping frenzy patches on these poor girls, he asks, as he steps out of the Nagasha's coils. He looks around to see the damage that the brawl has caused, and notes that the walls and floor are dented with ceiling tiles knocked out due to the Sonir's wings. The wall where he threw the Drin into has a rather distinct dent in it now, and the entire open hallway is just trashed. Well, so much for the shirt. He notes peeling off the remains of his shirt and jacket to reveal the tri-tight fiber vest he has on underneath. One of the latest and most reliable advancements in low-profile armor. It paired perfectly with the Axiom brand in that it also allowed a huge amount of defense against Axiom-based attacks and standard kinetic harm, such as cutting or piercing. Not much against being bludgeoned or strangled, but a perfect defense was perfectly impossible. The fighting had just plain stopped, as what few gangsters who aren't stunned or dead have clearly surrendered with Vera, having reverted from her war form, is naked and blood-soaked. 100 credits say you take the rest off. One of the restrained gangsters says, and Cenk gives the bound woman a glare. Did no one see the woman in the hoodie and face mask? He asks. No, Linda states. Any details? She's just became a suspect for assault and attempted first-degree murder. Black hoodie, face mask, no distinguishing features beyond general humanoid. Cenk trails off as he looks back and imagines the woman again. I think there was some distortion around the mask. She was also fairly tall, but I can't confidently confirm either. I was in the middle of a fight with numerous frenzied women. Are you all right? You've been bitten, Linda asks in a slightly disturbed tone. I'm a hell of a lot better than the women Vera bit. He deflects, if she's drawing attention to the kind of injury rather than the severity of an injury, he's probably fine. He can't actually feel it at this point beyond some slight pressure and a mildly warm and wet feeling. The pain will come later, or sooner if there's an alcohol swab in his future. What? I've got strong teeth in my war form, Vera says as she gathers up her discarded clothing. They had self-mended after her transformation, so she just slips them on regardless of the blood covering her from head to toe. Flashing lights from outside let them know that backup has arrived, and less than 20 seconds later, a small platoon of Platin come rushing in and stop dead in shock. Where's that ambulance? These women have been drugged with bootleg frenzy patches, Cenk demands. Officer Score, How many fatalities? One of the Platin officers asks as several others rush out to help clear the way for the gurneys. 3 minimum. They engaged a Takra in war form in melee after they had opened fire with deadly intent. 2 separate gangs were present. Clearly, some kind of meeting was occurring, and our arrival caused it to break out in violence. They recognized us as officers and immediately opened fire on us and each other. They singed me a bit. Nothing too bad, but I'm gonna need a shower after this, Vera remarks. You look all right, Linda, and there's a few marks on hubby, but he's gotten worse from me. Yeah, so long as we get these covered up and cleaned, I should be fine, Cenk says as he wonders. This is another step from the shroud. They had forced a reaction, or at the very least had caused the shroud to show another card in their deck. Drug manufacture and dosing civilians. That's a big step. A very big step. Everyone helps the girls be loaded up onto the gurneys and the ambulance whisks them away in a hurry, followed by several emergency trauma surgeons who stabilize and then cart off the entirety of the remaining gangsters. Apparently there was still hope for them so long as there wasn't massive brain damage, and they were still in the window of resuscitation, meaning that, despite there being a heavy amount of blood, there was still a more than even chance that this skirmish would end up with 0 casualties. During the flurry of official responses, Cenk, Linda and Vera are all seen to, and as Vera has some laser scorching and Cenk has numerous lacerations from the Drin, faint bruising and bites from the Nagasha, and a couple of gouges along his arms from the Sonier, he's given the most attention. Not that much is needed. The wounds while bleeding weren't deep enough to cause serious harm. A few sprays clean his wounds painlessly, and he's cleaned off in a hurry under the care of several Kobe first responders. He rejoins his girls and Vera leans into him and smiles up at him. That was a hell of a fight, monkey man. Thank you. Not much of one, though. They were just going insane and there was no skill or real strength to it. They didn't know how to fight, Cenk says, and Vera considers. Maybe. Skill is important, but instinct and sheer fury counts for a lot up close and personal. Vera remarks. You did the right thing. Going for those frenzy patches shut them down with a minimum of damage, and they should make a full recovery, Linda says, and Cenk sighs. I saw her, though. There was someone there in a black hoodie and a face mask. I know. I believe you, and it adds up. Unfortunately, you were being piled on and unable to give chase, and the cameras in the building are down, Linda says in a frustrated tone. I was under fire, and Vera was in war form and barely able to think at the time. It was the perfect moment to escape. What about outside? There are cameras everywhere. Surely something caught someone. We're looking into that, the other officer Linda was speaking to says. Her name tag reads Detective Shin. She's a Drin woman with a bright blue carapace, which is a fairly rare mutation among her kind. Aki Shin Detective. Cenk Barnabas, Specialist and Deputy Officer. And apparently a melee brute. So much so that a Horchka chose to set 3 frenzied women on you rather than face you directly. A Horchka? That explains the slight indentations on her mask, Cenk remarks. We got a good scan of her face and the registration of her vehicle. We're running it through the systems now. You provoked a reaction, a big one. This is a good lead. Or a false trail, Cenk adds as he thinks about all the different ways this could be a distraction. What did I tell you about the wilder theories? Linda asks him. Only when we exhausted the conventional ones, he replies. Good boy, she says, and Detective Shin giggles into her claw a bit.